All right, how you doing, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to This and That. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. Today's going to be a pretty cool show. I told you guys that I was going to give y'all some insight about real estate, and today is going to be the day we're going to be talking about tax liens. So I know that for those of you that were excited about investment strategies and stuff to that effect, the heck? I'm sorry, y'all. For some reason, there it is. All right. Look like we have us a little bit of a hiccup again. The internet is still not kosher. Not too sure what to do about that. We're still trying to figure that part out. And while we're trying to figure that part out, I'm going to wing it to the best of my ability. They're supposed to be having tech support call us later today, early tomorrow, to try to figure the situation out. So as we iron out our internet situation, just be patient with us. We will get it under control. And once we get it under control, you guys will see some extravagant streaming, new streaming styles, all this other stuff that we're going to be sampling and testing out as we go forward. So today, as I said, we're going to be talking about tax liens, the ups and downs of tax liens, and we're also going to be talking about some tax deeds. Now, one of the reasons why we're doing this type of conversation today was specifically because when you know how to invest, you can figure out a strategy that best fits for you, because there are a plethora of ways. There's a multitude of ways that you can set up a system that makes money for you specifically, but there are also other ways where you can set up the type of system that generates generational wealth, where your children and your children's children is able to maintain satisfactory standards of living from the wealth that you created. So, for those of us that have been talking about other ways like stocks and bonds and Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, those are other shows that I want to kind of touch base on. But today, we're really getting into more of the real estate, because while the other investment strategies are good ways to get money, you have different rules and regulations that you have to adhere to that requires you to put your money up for a certain period of time, wait for a positive result in the market, and then get your money back after a certain period of time. Is something that either you watch or you pay somebody else to watch by having a real estate broker or agent to manage your money with the skill set and capabilities of making your money make money for you, so that you have residual income that gives you a premium that is over the expenses of operating any trust or real estate business or investment capital business that you decide to build. Now, I told you guys before in the podcast to set yourselves up with a 20-year plan. And one of the reasons why I said set yourself up with a 20-year plan is because baby steps is baby steps. And it takes a lot of stuff for us to get this going, get this started. But once you start with the first set of residual capital, you work your way into the second, the third, the fifth, the ninth, and now you eventually, over time, which is why I say get you a 20-year plan, have a massive Rolodex of positive returns. Now, I'm going to give you guys some ideas, and one of the things that I'm also going to do while I'm giving you guys these ideas is I'm going to talk the ups and downs of these ideas and the stressors behind probably one of the reasons why not too many of the real estate investors that is doing flips are actually paying attention to this particular type of venture. Now, truth, they are actually getting into some of this stuff, just not as much as that you would be getting into it if you would be following my lead and turning this into something that's going to make a larger quantity of capital for you. So one of the things that we have learned about tax liens is that tax liens, for the sake of the lien itself, when you're getting a tax lien, you are paying the government, the city or state that the property is in, you're paying the government the back taxes that have not been paid on the property over a period of time. Now, the idea behind this is that the state offers you a percentage of interest back on the quantity of money that you've paid. Now, one of the reasons why this is a good thing to note is because it is almost guaranteed. And the reason why it's almost guaranteed is because the only way that you get the money from the government from the lien that you put on the property, because when you pay for the tax debt, they put a lien on the property. When they put a lien on the property cannot be sold without you getting your money back. So it's a lot like putting a lien or a hold on your registration, your vehicle registration, or the title of your vehicle. You notice that for those of you that are in Florida, when you guys experience the Department of Motor Vehicles putting a hold on your information where you can't renew your vehicle's registration information until you pay the back tolls. For those of you that are familiar with holds and liens on your vehicle's title, where you can't sell it until you have paid off the debt, or you can't acquire the title until you have paid off the debt. So the percentage of money that you're selling the car for must exceed the value of the debt held against the title, so that the person buying the vehicle from you can get the title free and clear from the title holder, whoever's got possession of the title. Now, when we're dealing with tax liens in and of themselves, it's a financial investment, and people typically buy the lien where the debt towards the property, somebody's living there, somebody owns that house, it might be their first year in. Big businesses are buying into these, and then they're recouping the losses from the homeowner. So the homeowner might just be like a couple months behind. The homeowner might be like 6 months behind, something like that. Just they didn't pay it this year kind of situation, but they're kind of good for it kind of thing. And those are the ones where the investment is key, because you put the money on it, you get your percentage back, 18% or more back in some areas, sometimes less, sometimes more, but you get your money back and it's good. Now, I know that I'm going to talk about down the line how this is a short-term situation, because it's transaction per transaction, and it is not going to be a consistent way to gain income. But the same way that you're flipping houses, where you're putting in $500,000 or $250,000 worth of revenue into this property in order for you to potentially get $10,000 or $20,000 as a profit yourself after all expenses are paid, you're looking at potentially getting less than 10% back on the return of flipping a house. So you're not really for buying and rehabbing and selling a house, you're not really making more money doing that over tax liens. You're just using a smaller quantity of money to make that same 10, 15, 20%. Now, the difference is also the value, because when you think about how if you're getting a 10% profit off of a $250,000 house, that's $25,000, where if you got a 10% profit off of a $5,000 tax lien, you might only get $500. But for those of you that are trying to get into investments, you're balling on a budget, or you're investing on a budget, and you don't have that $250,000 to throw down on buying a piece of property, turning it over, and then selling it. You can actually take a little bit of your extra capital and put it towards investing in tax liens. Now, what we've come to understand is that every year a limited quantity of the properties that have a tax lien on them are put up at the auction. Not all of the best properties are put up at the auction, but the ones that are put up at the auction that get bought are some of the better properties. So one of the things that people notice is that the leftovers outside of the auction are not as appealing to the eye as the ones that all of the big businesses fought over. Now, typically the returns are very practical, but in practice, the purchase price at the auction yields returns between 3 to 7%. And this is naturally because, according to the National Tax Lien Association's average, due to the competitive bidding at the auction, where what happens is that the first bid is whatever the outstanding balance is of the property. And then depending on how much somebody wants that property, they will continue to raise the bid. You can go from having an undervalued house be overpriced by the time it's sold, depending on how much one or two or three people want that property, and they bid against each other until everybody else gives up. And then the person at the highest bid stuck with the property. Now, at the end of the auction, some people have said, investors have said that they're not doing much better than investing in CDs. And one of the reasons is that you have one of the problems that you have with real estate investing into tax liens is that you have those situations where the lien doesn't get paid off right away. It just goes unpaid. When the house is foreclosed on, you can get your money sooner. But if the house is not foreclosed on, then you have, like, for example, it's a property that they own free and clear of the deed, and the only problem is that they have unpaid back taxes. The time it takes for the government to take action against the property, not necessarily the same quantity of time that a mortgage company would take control of the property. So one of the things you have to take into consideration is that a tax lien is still a debt. A debt is actionable up until it reaches its expiration date. That's going to be one of the issues that you have for tax liens. Once you have met the expiration date of the lien, you are not able to continue to attempt to collect that debt. So just like a debt collector, you're trying to get money on this property, you're probably not going to get it off the property like you want to get the money off of the property, specifically because you are throwing money down on something and then 10 years pass, 15 years pass, they ain't paid off the debt. And now you're stuck, just like any other credit card or other loan company that borrowed money out to somebody and that person didn't pay that money back. You're in a position, how you doing, Red Void? You're in a position where you're not able to recoup your losses or your investment. There are ways to circumvent that to a degree, and I'm going to get to that a little bit later in the show, but I thought that it would be interesting for to talk about. That is one of the downsides that makes it more of a moderate to high risk investment strategy, because you could put up $5,000 towards a property today and never get your money back off of that investment, and in fact have a total loss on that investment where you're not making any money off of that particular property. Now, when you have a tax lien, they generally expire. The lien generally expires after 10 years from the date of the assessment. So this is known as collection statute expiration dates, where you have certain dates in certain places where you just can't get it after a certain period of time, and that's a non-collectible debt. So these NCDs are situations typically with other stuff like credit cards and stuff like that. It's usually 2 to 3 years, medical expenses, 5 years, stuff like that. Look at your local tax laws, talk to local tax agents, and talk to the IRS agents and they'll give you some of the information on that. But you'll see that there are expiration times that are non-actionable after this date or after this time. So with that being said, you're looking at trying to figure out, how do you keep from losing your money? But if you know that it could take up to 10 years for them to pay you back, that's not that good of an investment if you're looking at 18%. Even though 18% over the course of 10 years, you put your money in there, it's good money. You'll get that 18% back with interest, and that's an annual percentage yield, not a 18% of what you put in. It is an annual percentage yield. So you put it in there, and for the duration of time it's there, you get your money back. But if it exceeds 10 years, you don't get your money back. So since after the 10-year period, the IRS loses the right to collect on tax debt or enforce on the lien, unless certain exceptions apply, you're probably not going to get your money back if you don't have an alternative way to circumvent investing into a tax lien to get your money. Now, there are several circumstances that can extend or suspend the 10-year statute of limitations, and that includes submitting an offer in compromise, meaning that you offer for them to settle at a lower amount than what you paid so that you can get some of your money back, being deemed currently not collectible, where there's an issue where you're not able to collect, entering into an installment agreement, where this is the golden opportunity to get your money even after expiration date, because if you have them sign a contract from the date of the contract to the date of the expiration of the contract, you're able to take action on that contract even outside of the payment option time. So if they give you a 10-year and you've got a 15-year contract of payment for some reason, I don't know why you would do 15 years, because taxes ain't that high in the United States. It's fucking higher than Japan, but it's not that high in the United States. You're looking at typically 5 or 10% of the value of the property, give or take. And that's just speculation on market averages. But you're looking at certain properties that are anywhere between $500 and $5,000 of taxes annually, where you're probably paying between $100 and $300 a month on property taxes annually, which means that if you had somebody get put into a installment plan for back taxes, you'd probably have them paying $400 or $500 a month annually, or $200 or $300 a month annually, for 2 times the length of whatever that time limit was, to give them lower payment rates where they can afford to pay you, but it kind of fixes their problem. That would be the smart way to go when you're doing those installments. But if they're behind on 2 years and their taxes is 10 G's, and you're going to give them 4 years to pay that 10 G's, and you're going to charge them 10% or 20% interest. Say you decide to charge them 10% interest for the sake of discussion. You pay 10 G's, they owe you 11 G's. Straight up. You divide that 11 G's, that's $1,000 a month almost for 12 months. So if they owed you that for 2 years and you broke down that 11 G's into $500 a month payments for 2 years, that's a car note. But if you broke it down to $250 a month for 4 years, it's more manageable for them. You're stretching it out to, and you can modify interest rates and say, hey, instead of 10%, I do 10% for the first 2 years and 20% for the second 2 years, where I'm getting more money on the back end of the remaining amount, because you didn't pay me off within the first 2 years. If they sign the contract, they have to give you whatever they owe you off of that particular situation. But as long as you've already paid, and I would talk about this down the line a second time, but if you are the person that's investing in this particular property and you know how much the property taxes is going to cost every year, you could draft them the type of document where you're going to put the lien on the property for the taxes, but you're going to pay the back payment and the upcoming year's payment, so that they've got 4 years on 3-year investment, and then they just got to make installment plans to you. Now, if they're making installment plans to you, they don't lose their house to the U.S. government. And since they don't lose their house to the U.S. government, they're typically going to be appreciative, some people. But if they don't got it, they don't give a damn what you do. And that's what we're going to be talking about later in the podcast, about how sometimes even the installments don't work, but the installments are actionable in civil court, where if it's written in your contract that failure to comply with the agreement that leads to legal action or enforcement in court, you got to get the legal jargon of that says that there's an X number of dollar penalty or an extra percentage penalty that is incurred, where when you go to the court, you would be getting a judgment in your favor for the amount of money that they owe you plus cost of court. And as long as they are aware that they're going to be paying for the fees and everything, in addition to the fact that they didn't pay on time, you can take a civil action against them, which is different from them filing bankruptcy or you filing for foreclosure. And this is just you getting your cash out of them, where when you win those particular type of situations, if you can prove that they have a source of income, you can potentially file for the type of documents that garnishes their wages, and you can still get your money off of that situation. It is a long and tedious strategy to go down when you deal with the consideration of what happens if they don't pay. But when you come from the consideration of making it a more effective way for people to not lose their homes to unpaid taxes, where they're now making installment plans to you, typically you're going to have to vet these people some kind of way to guarantee that they're going to give you the money that they owe. But if you're putting a lien against the property anyway, if they fail to take action, you can actually foreclose on the house and have a breach of contract lawsuit against them, where they would have to pay your dividends towards the breach of contract, and probably for the sake of discussion, separately from whether or not you foreclose on a house for the lien. The only difference is that you still got to deal with whoever else has more money invested into this title. Because if 4 or 5 different people got a lien on the property, in order for one person to claim the property, everybody's got to get paid off. So you got to consider that. In addition to installment plans, filing for bankruptcy is another way that people can prevent from being timed out on those 10-year statutes. And one of the reasons is because if they're in like year 8, year 9, year 10, and somebody says, hey, I didn't get my money, and then they file for bankruptcy, and that particular individual comes back and sends out a notice to all of the collectors. Those collectors have the right to file a paperwork with the court and say, hey, this person owes me money. And then in a bankruptcy arrangement, they have to show proof of the ability to pay you as well as all of their other debt in order for the bankruptcy court to acknowledge that payment arrangement. So you would get your money back through the bankruptcy court in installments, which could exceed the 10-year process, but it is possible to do. Being out of the country for more than 6 months, this could be a situation where if the owner of the property, of the payer, the debtor is not inside of the country, there's a situation where their ability to owe you money could be deferred, and also active military duty, their ability to owe you money could also be deferred. So you got to take these things into account when you're dealing with the extension of time, and that's just you not getting your money in a timely fashion. The IRS may refile the lien within 30 days of the original expiration date to extend it for an additional collection period. And that is if the IRS is trying to get their money off of the tax lien. So if you give the IRS money on behalf of the tax lien and it does not get paid by the debtor, then the IRS has got to go through the trouble of collecting the debt for you. If you do a direct contract with the homeowner and the homeowner doesn't pay you what they're supposed to pay you, then you could potentially take legal action against them for breach of contract at any point in time after the contract's been breached. But there's a statute of limitations for breach of contract state by state. Most statute of limitations for most civil actions is between 1 and 2 years. There are some civil actions that are actionable 2 to 4 years out, but checking your local laws as to how long you have from the date of injury, which is the date that the problem occurred, till the expiration date where you can no longer take civil action against them. You got to remember it is between 1 and 4 years, depending on the state, from the most recent date of the current complaint. So if it just happened last month, even though it's been happening for 7 years, if it just happened last month, that means that all of a sudden you can take action within the next 12 months of it just happening last month. But if it happened to you 10 years ago, you can't really take action on it because it's outside of the statute of limitations. Now, for investors who purchase the tax liens, the expiration of those liens means that you lose the right to collect on the money or foreclose on the property, and that creates a time pressure for you either to collect or foreclose before the lien expires. So since you understand that there is a 10-year time limit on the lien, what you want to do is if you're going to set up a payment option for the property owner, you want that payment option to be less than 10 years, typically 4 to 6 years. That way, if they do not pay the lien, you've got time to take action because civil action takes 2 years. And if you want to have 2 years left to still be able to foreclose on the house after you've taken legal action against them for breach of contract on the money, you can do all of that stuff inside of the 10 years and still be able to either get your house or get the property, whichever one you're aiming for. Now, one of the other problems that you have with going into tax liens is that if you are not paying attention to what you're putting your money on, if you're just grabbing whatever property you can afford in any location, anywhere, just because nobody else scooped that property up, thinking that, tax liens going to give you tax dividends, that's not true. Some properties are worthless, And those properties that are worthless, the property owner doesn't have any value in it either. They are not paying taxes on it because they could give two shits about that piece of land. You can't do anything with it. You can't develop on it. It could have a lot of violations. It could be an environmental hazard. It could have a lot of issues with it, to the magnitude that when you get it, it is just a money pit. And that means that you would end up getting a total loss. So in those situations where you decide to go in for the tax deed and the property owner decides to then back that up with in addition to the tax lien, they're hitting you with the fact that you foreclosed on it, you went through the trouble of getting the property, and now that you got the property, now you've got all of this extra stuff that you've got to pay for. That is a downside to going in on tax liens and tax deeds. Now, there are some complicated rules, and the complicated rules with the tax liens for investing involves complex procedures that vary by jurisdiction. And these complex procedures can be costly, but if you understand that the taxes on the property could be anywhere between 1 and 5% or 1 and 10% of the value of the house, you got a $500 property taxes or a $5,000 property taxes on a property that is valued at $50,000 or more. Then you put $5,000 down. Even if you sold a dry, bare bones piece of land for 50 grand, you still made 45 grand minus the cost to acquisition of property through a small claims court versus or foreclosure court versus the amount of money it costs for a real estate agent to put it up on the MLS and sell it for you. You still would potentially be walking away with 40,000, or worst case scenario like 30 to 35,000 on a house that you put up 5 to 10,000 total to get. Now, that's still a little bit higher than the market average of $10,000 to $20,000 of property that you're going to get after you've paid off the broker and the agent and this person and that person and advertisement and rehabilitation and contractors and all this other surveyors and all this shit. You still walking away with 10, 20 grand in real estate per property. But with this particular scenario, if you are going to buy a dry, bare bones piece of land and not build up on it from the ground up and just sell off the land for whatever it is, you put 10 grand into a property where the most money you had was 10 grand and now you've got like 30, which for you is actually a better investment, because if you don't have $250,000, you don't have the great credit, you don't know anybody who can give you a loan that you could go and buy that $250,000 property from. If you have access from your child support payments, your back taxes that was given to you recently, the stimulus check that's supposed to be given folks this year, if you've got that money lying around and you throw that money down on acquisition of a property that is 10% of the value of the property or 2% of the value of the property, you're able to walk away. You're putting $2,000 to $5,000 on a property that could be valued at $250,000. So there are more pluses than minuses, but there are some pretty stringent minuses that you have to take a look at. Like you're looking at the worst case scenario is not that you lose all of your money on this property. The worst case scenario is that you gain a property that you got to spend a shit ton more money on and you can't get rid of it. That is the worst case scenario. But when you're dealing with tax liens as an investor, you're putting your money in places where you're hopefully going to gain collateral back off of your investment. So you definitely want to recognize the risks from the benefits, but looking at the fact that every successful business deal is the cost of doing business. When you have the expenses versus profits, as long as you're up in profits, it's the cost of doing business. So don't worry about it. Now, the subsequent liens I talked to you guys about is going to be the other issue. When you're dealing with subsequent liens, if you end up foreclosing, you're going to probably find out that multiple people have a lien on this property. Now, you could probably contact the title company in your city and state, and they could potentially give you all of the information about this particular property before you start touching shit. and somebody might have it on record that there are documented liens on the property because everything is public record. Nothing is hidden. And because of that, before you put your money down on that property, you might come to find out that, oh, that property's already got 2 or 3 lien holders on it. But if you don't give a shit, if you're just taking the property and then you're going to foreclose on a property where the property is going to be put up for sale and liquidated the assets, where you're going to get what's left over after the other property owners get what they're entitled to, you can contact those other lien holders and make an offer to try to pay them off, or you can just zero everybody out and then keep the change. But in order for you personally to have full ownership of the property, where you got to foreclose on the property and the title will not change from the former owner to you until you've paid off everybody else, in that situation, you have got to pay off everybody else. So that is in addition to how much the property is worth. So assume, for the sake of this particular example, the person was 2 months behind. One guy paid $5,000 for it. This other 2 months behind, another guy paid $5,000 for, or not 2 months, 2 years. So 2 years behind, first guy pays for it. That's $2,500 a year. Other guy pays for it. That's $2,500 a year. Guys, overall, 4 years behind. That's $10,000 worth of money. You put up $5,000 to pick up 2 more years. This person's 6 years behind. They don't have the money to pay for it. You got to foreclose on the house. You got to give $10,000 to the other guys, which is a total of $15,000 for you to gain possession of the property. But in doing so, you would have to then try to recoup your rewards off of selling the house or rehabbing the house and then putting it up for rent. Some people feel like there's not enough money involved in that particular type of setup, and that's one of the reasons why they choose not to go down that path. But if you're mixing and matching all of these different endeavors together, you could potentially have a pretty decent size revenue if your mentality is not solely based off of throw some money down, get some money back. Because if you're going to throw some money down and get some money back, your best bet would be to go to Bitcoin, or throw some money down, get some money back. You want to partner with TD Ameritrade and throw some money into some stocks and bonds and shit, so that you can guarantee that you're getting revenue back without having to try. That's when you're really starting to get a decent quantity of revenue without having to put effort into it. Now, you're going to have, with these tax liens, you're going to have unexpected costs. And the unexpected cost does include foreclosure. So I just want you guys to understand that, including the cost of court for foreclosure, you also have unexpected repairs. And I can't call them unexpected repairs, but the expenses of repairs, such as like the roof might need to be done. You might have to gut it because of mold and mildew. You might have to iron out a lot of other things on the property, like flush out a septic tank or redo the plumbing or something like that. It could be something major that you have to do, but you didn't know that because you wasn't planning. You didn't survey the property before you threw your money down on it. You didn't, walk over there and take a look at the property before you went over there and tried to grab it. You just grabbed it because you seen a listing for this particular tax lien online. You could have a lot of things wrong with the property, and that's going to be a huge turnoff towards your profit. So even though foreclosure is supposed to be rare, because most people want their house, investors have the right to foreclose if the taxes aren't paid. And this rarely happens. When you do have it, most tax liens, over 97%, are redeemed by property owners, which means that they can actually go back and try to redeem the title back when the title is being seized by unpaid taxes. So if foreclosure does occur, there may be an unexpected cost like the legal fees and repairs and evictions of the occupants that are in there if this is a rental property, and that can take away some of the profits of you calling yourself trying to sell this, or calling yourself trying to get back the money off of your investment. So depending on what you're after, if you're doing this after just the interest rates, you have to take a lot of these things into consideration, because the fact is that 18% is 18%. And the more money that you spend out of that 18% to gain control of the property, to get your money back off of the property, is money that you're not going to be able to recoup, which means that you either break even or have a loss where you're spending more money than you're making. But if you go into tax liens with the idea that you're actually trying to gain a property, that's not a tax lien, that's a tax deed. And if you're going into it with that mentality where your goal is to gain control of the property and then utilize the value of the property as collateral towards other deals, that's when you need to start taking into account some other variables. Now, one of the things that you want to deal with is the fact that when you're dealing with these tax liens, this is a one-time payout. So since this is a one-time payout, you're still going to have to find a larger number of investments to invest in order for you to get a larger quantity of payouts back. Unlike stocks and Bitcoin and stuff like that, you put your money up one time and the money flips itself. Especially if you're doing trade bots, the money flips itself until you don't until you go and get the money. You don't have to do anything else. But when you're dealing with tax liens, transaction by transaction, you set up this transaction. Once you get paid off, that's it, and you got to do another transaction. Which also means if you're holding $100,000 and you're trying to get 10 or 20 properties rotating out, so that you can get 18% interest, which is about 18 grand off of 100 grand. You're putting up 100 grand. You're not really getting that much back off the property, off of all of the properties that you're working with overall. And then since you're going to have some losses involved in there, you're going to put up 100 grand. You're out of the 18 grand that you get back. You might get back 10 to 12 grand, depending on how many losses that you took in that calendar year out of the real estate that you've done, if you're diligently working exclusively on tax liens. Now, one of the other things that's going to make tax liens hard is the competition. And the competition is the reason why some people are walking away between 3 and 7% on tax liens, because some of the larger institutional investors have entered the market and they are making it harder for individual investors to find good deals, because the institutional investors have a team of people, 20, 30, 50 people that are investing into the market area that you're working in, where they're scooping up all of the best deals. Doesn't mean that there isn't a good deal out there. It just means that it's not as good as the one that got taken from you, because not only did they have more money to outbid you, they also had more people looking into more properties than what you took time to look into. So you can comb the whole area, but the time it takes for you to comb the whole area, inspect the areas that you combed over and determine which ones you're going to buy. If they're paying 30 people to do the same thing, they're covering 30 houses for every one house that you cover. So by the time you cover 30 houses, 15 of them might be sold. 5 of them you might not be interested in. And the other 10 is being closed on. So you could potentially lose out on deals. But if you're going to fly overhead like a vulture and pick the scraps, whatever's left over, which typically with tax liens are rundown houses, abandoned houses, foreclosed properties, hazardous properties, and then lands where the house is no longer there anymore for whatever reason, whether it got torn down, burned down, whatever, the house is no longer there anymore. So you're bidding on land tax for a house on this property, and you come to find out that that land does not have a house on it anymore, but the taxes from when the house was on there still owed. Because remember, a land with house on it is more valuable than just dry land. So even though it does have an ROI, the ROI is not going to be anywhere near as much as what it would have been if there would have been a house on it. One of the other things that you got to deal with tax liens is going to be due diligence towards the extensive research that you need to put into each property. And that's going to be very time consuming. And that's one of the reasons why the big businesses are able to take all of the best deals, because if they have a whole department where there's 30, 40, 50 people that are doing this, you've got more people looking into all of the houses in that market area than the one individual can do by themselves, which means they can find the ones with the lowest taxes owed in the best condition with or without an owner in it, where they have contacted the owner and finagled their way into gaining ownership of that house, or working themselves into some type of payment option where they can get the money from the tenant, from the property owner, and not have to lose out on the interest invested or the revenue invested. Still means that they're going to be dealing with some drawbacks, because you got to pay the cost to be the boss, which means that they're going to have to put money down, put extra money down to be first in line. But if you're making profits, whether it's a 3% profit or a 50% profit, money is money. It's the cost of doing business. If you're drawing back something, you're doing better than drawing back nothing. Now, I understand that I said before that we have to deal with those potential losses. So if the tax people who are trying to collect on the property remain unpaid and don't get a chance to collect on that property, the property has no value to you. So you can lose your entire investment on that. The limited availability of tax liens on properties, and not all states allow tax lien investing. And then you also have the restricted opportunities to invest in certain properties, where they may limit it to, you must be a resident of the state, or your business that's investing in a property must be registered to do business in this state. Those criteria limit your ability to invest in certain cities and certain states. But when you do in your research and you're finding certain cities and certain states and certain market areas that are not restricting your ability to invest, by all means, I encourage you to do so. So you also have ongoing tax obligations, because if you put your money down on a property, if you don't keep paying the taxes on the property, then you could end up competing with that same property with multiple different people. If you're the only person with a lien on the property, you can go straight to foreclosure. You're the only person that has to be satisfied. You're grabbing the property. You can flip it, you can wholesale it, whatever you want to do, and get your money back with a little extra on top, and you're doing good. But if you stop paying on the house, then other people could continue to pay on the house with you, and now you've got 2, 3, 5, 7, 9 people that have invested on the same property, and everybody is entitled to their cut. Now, you have cash incentives from the cities and states that you're in, and unpredictable markets. So there's a lot of other issues that goes on with the ongoing taxation. You have tax liens, where investors are required significant capital and can be unpredictable in terms of when those liens will be redeemed. So you could put, like I said, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 down, depending on how big the lien is, and you don't know when you're going to get that money back. So that's going to be one of the most stressful parts about piecing this particular type of operation together. But remember, that's also because you're going through a third party, and they move at their own speed. So they're not going to move at your speed. And that's going to mean that in order for you to turn that profit in a faster period of time, you've got to be able to have direct connect, cut out the middleman, and take care of the situation yourself. We're going to be talking about that more a little bit later. You also have early redemption risks. Now, this is another issue that is problematic for investors, is the early redemption risk. Now, early redemption risk typically comes from the property owner being capable of paying off the taxes and interest early. So if you were supposed to be getting a certain quantity of money percentage per year, and that year didn't wrap itself up, the quantity of percentage you probably could have gotten, you're not going to get, because they paid it off in full. Since it minimizes your returns, people find that to be problematic as well. Your time invested in this is going to be significant, and that time invested can take years to see a significant return if you are not doing this elegantly. And no matter how great you are, if it ends up in foreclosure, the legal process is lengthy. So when we start taking into consideration those tax deeds, like I was telling you guys before, because I did say we've got deeds, and deeds are typically more effective for you than liens, but deeds have the same foreclosure obligations that you don't really want to deal with if you're not used to it. But a tax deed is a legal document that grants the ownership of a property to a government entity or third party when the original property owner fails to pay their property taxes, which you could pretty much swap shit up with a quitclaim. Now, the purpose of the tax deeds is to allow the local government to recover unpaid property taxes by selling the property for the value of the unpaid taxes. So no ongoing interest payments with the tax deeds. They're not going to be giving you back your 18%. They're going to just give you the deed of the property. Now, the value of the property should far exceed the value of the debt if the property still has a house on it with reasonably good conditions in it. So if you did have to pay 10 grand for the house and the house is worth $170,000 because it needs some repair, or $125,000 because it needs a lot of repair, fact is you can let that house go for $120,000 and you only put up 10 grand to get $120,000. So to me, it's not really that big of a downside that you didn't get a chance to rehab the house, that you didn't pick up the house and do a move-in, do like a quick fix and rent, buy and hold kind of situation. What's really important is the fact that if you put up 10 grand and within a reasonable period of time, you're able to turn that 10 grand into 150 grand. And as we said earlier in the show, oh my God, do I have 33 pages here? I think I've got, yeah, I got 33 pages. I'm sorry. This was a lot of research, y'all. I told y'all I come prepared. And we on page 13, so we got 23 more pages. Oh my God. All right, so redeemables. The redeemable deed is when they give you a statute of limitations from the day that you want to seize the property for non-payment of the taxes, for the property owner to do what it takes to maintain control over the property. Now, there are some states that do not have redemption periods. Some states have redemption periods, but when they have redemption periods, sometimes it's around about 6 to 18 months, depending on what city and state that you're in. You got to go check your local listings, your local laws to determine what that is. But with redeemable deeds, if the property owner is redeeming it within the redemption period, the investor gets their money back plus the interest due at that time. So that's where tax liens become beneficial to you. But when you're trying to get that house in the tax deed and they pay you back with interest on a tax lien, you are pissed off because you were not trying to get your money back. You were trying to get that house. But it's good that you got your money back, because that's a win-win, because you're either going to walk away with a house or you're going to walk away with your money back with interest that you can invest into another house. And if you're investing it into another house in the same fiscal year, you're not paying taxes on the money that you got back with interest, because the money was invested in real estate, and that investment in real estate is a tax deduction. So if taxes remains unpaid, the government will sell that property at a tax deed sale or auction. And those are the auctions that I was telling you earlier, where those tax deeds are 3 to 7% profits, because the people are flipping them after they've argued over the property in an auction. I don't really like auctions. Auctions is a great way to go to get stuff on the cheap. But when you're dealing with something that's very, very valued and completely underrated, it holds no value financially, but it holds a lot of sentimental value to a lot of people, which means that all of those people are going to be outbidding you, because while it holds no significant value, the appraisal value is shit low, like a crashed 12-cylinder Mustang. Like, there's no value there from the 60s and 70s, but it might have a lot of personal value to two different people. And now you're at a bidding war where a car that was worth less than $300 is now worth $3 million because they didn't stop bidding against each other. So you just got to pay attention to how that turns itself over. So the transfer of ownership, unlike tax lien certificates, the tax deeds transfer full ownership of the property and the responsibilities of the property owner. So whatever responsibilities that were not adhered to from the previous property owner is now your responsibility. There are some situations where you can waive any of the government disapproved citations and penalties and stuff that they put on that particular property for the original property owner. But there are a lot of times where you're going to adopt all of the penalties from that property as the current property owner. It's not always in your favor, but if you do extensive research on it, you're not moving as fast as a big business, because big business got more people involved. But if you're focusing on ones that big business are not focusing on, you're probably still going to be able to draw back a profit. And snail's pace, you build up your business where you've got, a decent quantity of homeowners that are paying you installments or paying you in full, and that cash revenue gives you the ability to get you some cash loans where your the monthly income that's coming in is your collateral, and that gives you the ability to borrow against a stone and use a massive quantity of money and start buying properties. Now, what we can do is we can negotiate. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But before we get to negotiating, you understand that when you're dealing with the auctions, the minimum bid in the auction is the full amount, like I said before, of the taxes that's owed on the property, associated with any sales tax as well. And the highest bidder is going to get that property, which means that the property is going to get paid off with spades, unless you decide to go and work out a deal with the property owner directly. Get everything signed, get it notarized, and you would see yourself with more success than what you would. And then when you're taking action on the property, you've got contracts and everything like that. So you want to see yourself with more success than what you would just putting it in a third party's hands to get you your money. Now, when you have payments, successful bidders often have 48 to 72 hours to pay the full amount. So if you want a property that is up for sale by the government or on some type of auctioneer site where it's first come, first serve, whenever you decide that you want that property, however much money you say you will pay for that property over the asking price, you got to have that money accessible so that if they say, sure, we'll take your money, that you got it to give. You can't wait 30 days. You can't wait till your next payday next week or 2 weeks from now. Like, if you don't got the money, you can't put your money down on it. That's how tax liens and tax deeds work. Which is why I said, yeah, it could be still good because you could put your money down when all you maxed out was 10. You got the house for 5. The court cost you 5. You spent a total of 10. You sold the house because you couldn't do anything with it. And 75 grand for a $120,000 house that needed to be a rehab where the after repair value is $350,000. Any wholesaler would take that shit, but it gives you 50 grand, gives you 75 grand. So, some people say, well, that's stupid to do. But I mean, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to learn from experience. And that's where your partial profits from potential investors acquiring properties below market value through the tax deeds, where the homeowner doesn't get it at market value. If you're selling it off to somebody else, you're probably not going to get it at market value, but you're going to make some money. The person who's getting rid of the property is going to be able to pay off some debt, and somebody else is able to take it and get the rest of the money off the top. You still got the same risks of having other liens on the property and unexpected costs on the property, and the redemption period where even though you're trying to take actions on that particular property, you still have the ability to receive your investments back instead of getting that property, or you'll be able to get penalties in addition to your interest back. But you have one of those one-time payment transactions where this is not going to be residual interest being paid, unlike Bitcoin or Amazon or iTunes or whatever the case may be. But the difference is with this is that when you're reinvesting back into real estate, you have a lot of reasonable tax deductions that offsets the profits that you're getting, because the profits that you're getting from interest-bearing accounts is going to fall under that 13.8% for stocks, bonds, and investments, maybe a little bit more, give or take, where you're looking at, holy crap, we're paying almost 20% taxes. Yeah, that's kind of how that works. So the purpose of the tax deeds is that if an owner falls behind, or the purpose of the redemption part of the tax deeds is that if the person falls behind on their payments, that the government can sell the property to somebody else for the cost of the back taxes, which does drop the property value down for all the other properties in the neighborhood. But I mean, do you really give a shit? Especially if you're doing a fix and flip, or if you're doing a wholesale where you're going to take ownership or possession of the property and then you're going to wholesale it to somebody else who feels like doing a fix and flip, whatever you want to do. Silent partners, make your money, make more money for you. Now, during the length of the redemption period, you understand that period can vary. Some places have it as low as 3 months. The other places have it as high as 6 months, like in Connecticut. You have places that have it for 6 months or longer, where these properties have already been abandoned. Typically, you're going to see that inside of Connecticut also. And when you're looking at what happens during this period, the tax deed is typically held by the town clerk's office, and that's where you're going to go to get the list of properties that have that still exist, that have unpaid taxes on them, and you got to try to pick them up as you find them by getting the information to contact the homeowner, and then go to the homeowner and contact them and say, hey, I see that your house is being foreclosed on XYZ. I'm from XYZ. You know, if I pay the debt, you pay me back with interest, and I can square your way so that the U.S. government doesn't take your house. Being able to work out some kind of deal with somebody probably gives you more success than working through the government, because you know how we treat big business. If we ain't got it, we ain't got it. But if I can make it make sense to you to help me help you not get put out, you know, I'm not just some shark that came over and scooped up the fact that you're about to lose your house. I actually found a way to keep you in your house, or took control over your house, turned your house into a rental property, and let's still allow you to live there. Either way it goes, you know, you got to try to find a way to make sure that the sale goes through, and then you hold on to that property instead of doing a quick flip, because that's where you're going to get your residual income from, not investing in the liens themselves and getting back the interest, because it's a one-time interest installment after they've paid the bill. So since we understand that the original owner must pay inside of their redemption period, and they don't, then they lose the property, you have the understanding that they're paying that with interest, with additional service fees, and that's going to be paid to the tax deed purchaser or the government entity if nobody purchased the property from the government, or purchased the lien from the government, because that's what you're doing. You're buying the debt. The original owner will regain the title with a clear title, and the tax deed purchaser will receive their money back with interest. And if you don't redeem that after the redemption period, the tax deed purchaser can take steps to gain full ownership of the property, which means just like if you don't pay your phone bill all the time, to cut your phone off, if you don't pay off your house during a redemption period, they can sell your house. You just got to renegotiate it with them. There are some variations that you're going to be dealing with this, so I'm still going to tell you again to go ahead and talk to your local real estate agent, tax agent, IRS agent, CPA. If you know somebody that's an investor, this is why I told you get you a better circle. Just start asking people questions, and they'll kind of give you a little bit more insight and advice on that. And that way you'll be able to see yourself being more successful from the first activity. Now, since there's also specific rules that are significantly exclusive to state-to-state operations, you want to make sure which states you can do what before you start doing it, because you don't want to do anything that's not legal and then end up, you know, like Martha Stewart. So the investor's consideration is the tax deed purchasers must be aware of the redemption period in the jurisdiction, so that you know how much time they have to try to come and get this house back. You also want to be able to shop in places that don't have that restriction, where they are not putting a lien on the property. You either come get it or you don't. That's how you solve that issue. Now, they may need to monitor the property and continue paying taxes on the property if you're dealing with a jurisdiction issue. And you also have to understand that the cost of that is going to come out of the property owner. And since you just went after the title, you might be the primary owner until they work out the details of who's the owner, if there's multiple people involved claiming entitlement to the ownership of that particular property. You know that the rules are going to be different from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So, you know, you just have to remember that tax deeds differ from tax liens in that they transfer actual ownership of the property rather than just the right to collect on the tax debt. And they represent a more direct form of property acquisition, but also comes with greater responsibility and potential risks for the purchaser, meaning that you could put all this extra money up and not get shit. So when you're focusing on tax deed investing, you're generally focused on the acquisition of properties below market value, not earning interest payments. So the profitable potential comes from either selling the acquired property or keeping it as a rental property. So remember, when you're looking at drafting a tax lien contract, is what I was talking about earlier. You have to remember that tax lien laws can vary from state to state, and you got to be careful about how you factor in the actionable contract that you guys signed about you getting your money back was done in a reasonable fashion within the confines of the law. So you got to tiptoe around that. The next step that you have is some new stuff like clearly when you're dealing with the contract, the first thing you're going to have to do is state clearly the parties involved, which means that it's the buyer of the tax deed, the seller of the tax deed, or the government is selling it for them, the homeowner who's going to lose their house. You have to state the parties involved, because that's just like developing civil action, who all is involved in this legal case if the case goes south. Then you want to specify the properties that are involved. You want to include full legal descriptions of the property subject to the tax lien, which I would encourage you to use some of the information that's given to you from some of the real estate platforms like Realty and potentially look, y'all, I can't, Zillow and then MLS. Those are the three places that you can go in there looking. In addition to that, you want to include the original tax lien amount and any accurate interest that you put on there. Include any additional fees or expenses incurred by the lien holder, which means that you would really be charging the cost of court. The lawyer you have on retainer, you're going to be naming everything involved with it to say, hey, give me a certain number of dollars and we'll wash this shit away. And it can work. The next step you have is outline the payment terms. So if you're working through this contract and you set up your payment terms, you're going to be able to find yourself snatched up by the arms into a higher level where they take good care of you. Now, explain the redemption periods. We already talked about that. We got somebody diving in. Hey, that's bro. They got some wild and crazy questions over here. So we're just going to be tap dancing back over here to so include the clause about the transfer of rights. So you're going to state that upon full payment, the lien holder will relinquish all rights to the property acquisition through the tax lien. So any entitlement that you have to the property, you'll forfeit that after you've been paid in full. You want to specify any conditions or contingencies. So, for example, if the redemption of the property is contingent to the homeowner securing financing, you can utilize that. Address what happens if the homeowner fails to pay, potential consequences such as proceeding with foreclosure or additional interest, late fees, stuff to that effect, and itemize it almost like a rental lease, just not a rental lease. You want to include representation and warranties, and you want to also throw in the identities of the lien holder and the homeowner and who all has rights to the lien and redeeming the property. You want to consider adding a confidentiality clause, one of those NDA forms. You want to include that in here so that nobody talks about what's in your contract unless you're in a legal setting like court. Include signatures of both parties with perceivably the same time and the same date on the same agreement. Consider having the agreement notarized for additional legal protection, where the notary would be a third witness, non-biased party that is signing on to your situation to say, yeah, I see that, I know what's going on, and really run with you on it so that you are able to conquer taking legal action against this particular property because they're not doing what they're supposed to do with paying you back. So that contract, you can talk to a tax agent, you can talk to tax lawyers that you have on retainer and incorporate that cost into the agreed upon amount, and they got to pay you that with whatever agreed upon interest that you're throwing down, and make it make sense for you, so that when you make it make sense for them, they're able to say, yeah, I'll pay into that, and save their house. Any expenses that are written off to the debtor is a cost of doing business for the lien holder. So you're not trying to overcharge them on the property, but you are trying to make sure that a reasonable quantity of the money that you have to pay is not coming out of your pocket. And then you're going to take all of your money and put, or most of your money and put it onto the tax lien, so that when this person is making those monthly installments, they're getting you're getting a return back on your investment. Now, this works in multiple different countries. You just have to go to your local laws for your cities and states and countries that tells you how you can go about acquiring real estate property through tax liens and tax deeds, because America is one way, Romania is another way, Asia is another way. But regardless of what the differences are, there are similarities. As long as you can speak their language or reasonably translate it, you are capable of doing business there. You just got to set yourself up. If you set yourself up for success, your 2-year plan will be a 2-year plan. Your 20-year plan will be a 20-year plan. But no wrenches can be thrown into this plan that screws up the plan where the plan can't function. That's not, if you're setting up the tiers of success correctly, that is not as possible as if you're just recklessly out there taking your last paycheck, throwing it down on a random property and hoping that it's going to throw back money. It doesn't work out. If you're throwing rocks in a glass house, you're highly likely to get cut. So you want to make sure that before you start skipping stones, that there's not going to be a ricochet into a glass wall. Just remember that. That is all I had for you guys for today, because I was supposed to be giving you guys a lot of stuff about real estate and tax liens and tax deeds. And this is actually going to be a pretty interesting long short, because it's an hour and 6 minutes long. But we did not have deficiencies on the podcast, on the YouTube side. We did have some lag on the TikTok side throughout the show, but we did not have a lot of lag on the YouTube side. So we have a small improvement. Still waiting. They got to call me tomorrow and see what they're going to do to help me with the network that I'm dealing with, because we've lost connection on it about 3 or 4 times since Friday. But we're going to see where it goes. I'm still working on them providing me with my full month's credit, because they're not doing what they're supposed to do. But we're gonna get the modem done, and when we get the modem done and we get a free month of service, everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. So since that's all I have for you guys for today, I'm gonna go ahead and tap out today, because I am burned out on both ends, because I did a lot of research on this, and then it is just a brain freeze as to how much information has to be retained, and just reading all of that information is obtaining a lifetime of knowledge and effort on tax liens and tax deeds. And if you're really trying to make it work, you've got to go through each one of these steps and figure out how you can get started. And that's one of the things that people don't really think about. So I kind of wanted to throw that in there, because I thought that it would be highly important. So as I sign out today, and make sure that you guys jump in 7 days a week, 9 Eastern, 8 Central, 5 Pacific. And ladies, as long as the situation doesn't make sense, I'm going to ask you ladies to make it make sense. So ladies, make it make sense. And for the rest of you guys that are still following us here on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, because we just walked out on TikTok. Man, they didn't even give us nothing. Really, this is when you know that there must be a game on, because we didn't have as much as we usually have coming through here from TikTok side. But we've been doing 2,000 to 3,000 views per day off of the 4 videos that we are releasing between noon and midnight. So we're picking up traction over on TikTok side. We have almost 40,000 views per month on the TikTok side, where we were doing 43 views a month on the YouTube side just yesterday, or not yesterday, last month. And we're probably going to be increasing the same on TikTok coming soon, or Twitch coming soon, but we haven't gotten there yet. So keep hanging out with us, Red. Make sure. Got another person. There's a card game. They want me to play it, so I'm going to do that as well. So we got 2 guys so you're going to start seeing me during a live podcast showing you guys some of the affiliate stuff that I got. So one of the things that I got that's not an affiliate item, I remember I told you guys, I was talking to somebody about it, and then we started talking about something. I was talking about Wolf. I was talking to Wolf about it, and I told him how I got the laser for the firearm. And when I got the laser for the firearm, I like the fact that the laser actually fits snug on the firearm. I know y'all can see that, but the laser right there, and it has a green light on it. So if you see the green light on it, it's pretty nifty. and it's dual on both sides, the left and the right side. There is a button on both sides, so ambidextrous. You can utilize that, and it is a single stack that I have, and I got that because New York and California are putting restrictions on 10-round mags. So I said, well, full size doesn't have 10-round mags. Full size has 19-round mags. But I thought it was really nifty when I got the laser. I bought it. It slid on like a glove. It wasn't nice at all. It wasn't a smooth kind of clip thing. I had to like wedge it in there like dental floss between jagged teeth. I had to wedge it in there. Once I got it on there and then screwed it down, it is imprinted into the firearm. You can't even tell that it is in addition to the firearm. You just know that it is in addition to the firearm. Now, the only thing that's different with that particular piece was that I had to adjust my holster because the holster had a extra piece over here at the bottom that was sewn in, and that piece I had to cut open so that I could have the extra space for the light. So knowing that, I wanted to have on my gun belt, I wanted to have a holster that holds the light. The holster that I currently have on my gun belt doesn't hold the light, and the other holster that, where is the holster? The other holster that comes with it is here. The other holster that comes with it is this one. I don't like it, and it's a in the waistband one. So this goes up against your body. This goes up against the belt loop, and you kind of just stick it in there. I didn't like that but it fits. It fits in there. It fits in both of them. You just slide it in, and it's a quick draw. There's no snap or anything. I like the other one because most states have the requirement when you're dealing with your firearm to have it secured in the holster. So it has to have some kind of lock on it. So even this little button clip on it, it's still secured in the holster, so it's not going to fall out of the holster. And because it's not going to fall out of the holster, it's considered secure, so you can ride with it in your car. And if you have to get out of your vehicle with the holster on your person, the gun doesn't fall out of your holster, because that's clearly important that you don't want to get shot at by police when you get out of the car with your gun. So I got that laser, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is going to be awesome. And then after I got that, I said, well, I'm going to go get a new holster that I could put onto my gun belt. And haven't gotten it yet because I'm still making, it's the first of the month, so I'm moving money around. So I said, well, let me go ahead and take care of some of the things that needs to be taken care of real quick. And then after I take care of these things, then I'll go ahead and order that, get that in. So I'll be showing you guys what that new holster looks like with the laser, if it's compatible. I'm supposed to get an extra magazine with that particular holster. So not a magazine holder. So I've got 3 on the gun belt, 1 extra here on this one, and another twin over here on the side on the table, where if I was doing it inside the waistband kind of situation, I could have my firearm and 2 to 3 mags on my person inside the waistband. Or if I'm rocking the gun belt, because I like the out of the waistband, because I like the quick draw style, I would be able to have like 5 or 6 of them out of the waistband. And I think that that's better for the draw, because I kind of want to tack whatever my target is on the Wild Wild West, just kind of quick draw kind of thing. So as I get some nifty items, I want to be able to start showing you guys on the show what's coming in, what I'm picking up. So we still have the investor book. I got to check on the investor book and see where it is at, because it's supposed to be coming in. And then after I check on the investor book, we have another product that is supposed to be coming in. The card game. They want me to look at the card game, troubleshoot the card game, play the card game a little bit, give everybody tips and tricks on card games. So I'm going to be talking to you guys about the card game on the show. There was one they wanted me to do something about dogs, but they're like, oh, hey, come and buy our product. We'll give you 70% off. Fuck you, man. You want me to spend $60 on a $100 and something item so that I can? And I didn't even see anything on their site that was worth getting to my own personal preferences because they had water dish that it was a dual purpose water dish, which is kind of nifty in a way, but I don't see myself spending money on a water dish when I've got 8 of those. They had dog collars. My dogs have wireless collars with remotes that control the dogs. So getting me, they're like, oh, get an Apple AirTag in case your dog gets lost. Yeah, they work if you got an iPhone. I don't have an iPhone, so getting an Apple AirTag isn't encouraging to me. So I was just sitting there thinking, I don't know about all that stuff. So now, if you send me something for free, I could talk about it. But if you're gonna just, there was this one, I'm still debating on it. I might actually do it. They're talking about giving me a $150 credit towards the purchase of a fragrance. And that's all I'm going to get is the fragrance. So I'll get a free fragrance shipped to me. Hopefully don't have to pay for the shipping. And if I did that, I could do a video on that fragrance and then I get to keep the fragrance. Now, to a magnitude, it's not valuable to me as a man because I think they're female fragrances, but if I can find something dude worthy, I can still go and grab that, do a free video, got me some free smell good, and it's a $150 bottle of smell good that I probably wouldn't buy if I wasn't doing an affiliate video for it. But if I'm getting a free product to do a video for it, I can improve the credibility of my podcast by doing a bunch of affiliate videos and then use that clout to say, hey, I've been getting folks traffic, so come and sign up with me. So I told you guys, you got to find ways to pay for the podcast because the podcast doesn't pay for itself. I do have to invest in it. As I told you, Red, it is a lot of capital that goes into running one of these things. And while we do make money off of it on the back end after we've gotten fully established, you don't see very profitable podcasts until they start crossing over 100,000 views or 100,000 subscribers. And you really start seeing the money when they start getting to 1 million subscribers. But having the type of podcast that kind of rotates out on different niches on a regular basis, it is less likely to have like 1 million views in a short period of time. It's more likely to have, a few thousand views here and there. And as a small podcast, you're competing against tons of other podcasts that are actually going to be airing at the same time, which means that YouTube's algorithm is going to redirect all of the traffic to the more popular podcast because of the quantity of people that jumped on when they went live. So that means that the smaller podcasts are not always going to have as much traffic when the larger podcasts are up there. So now that we see YouTube and wrestling and football and wrestling and stuff like that on YouTube, you're going to see less for those of us that are starting podcasts in the more recent times. You're going to see less traffic jumping on your page when you are streaming while a major sporting event is happening because the sporting event can be watched on YouTube. So, we're going to be working on all these things. We're going to be working around all of these things. But, so as some nifty things come in, you're going to start seeing them. I'm going to be setting them right over here somewhere. And you'll see like the little book. You'll see the deck of cards. I'll show you guys what's going on. I'll talk about it on the show and, do a side video on it. So all of these things will be things that you guys get to experience. And as I get the owner of these products or the representative of these products to be willing to be a guest star on the show, because I do have a strange time of night, as I get them to agree to be on the show, even if they're on the show for a very brief while, 10, 20, 30 minutes, I want to be able to bring people onto the show as guests so that they can talk about what they had me promote earlier this week or earlier this month, so that you guys can ask them questions if you like, and also be able to interact with them on a direct basis, which also kind of helps with, getting the word out as well as giving you guys a little bit more variety, because with this and that, what we talk about is this, that, and everything in between. So I really appreciate you hanging out for the extra. I will see you, Red. I'll see you tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. they are telling me that I can do an outro video. I'm gonna have to do some research about that. You know, they gave me an update on StreamYard right before I started the show. They tell me, hey, you can do intros and outros. Like, bitch, if I didn't set that shit up before, like now I have to create an intro video and an outro video. That actually might help though, because if I create an intro video and I'm running late, the intro video can run before I start. But the outro video gives me a way to walk out of here without having to do a long walk out. Either way, we're going to figure it out. Like I said before, as it improves, y'all will see better. Till tomorrow, y'all have a good night.